England are feeling confident ahead of the Calcutta Cup. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Yeah, it's been a few years since I think England would have looked forward to the Calcutta Cup as much as they are this year. I think England feel maybe it's their year to break that hoodoo, that they've progressed and maybe Scotland have stood still a little bit. Whether that's true or not, we're going to find out on Saturday. So let's have a look at the details of this one. So it's England versus Scotland. It's on Saturday, 22nd of February, 2025. It's at the Allianz Stadium in Twickenham. It's a 4:45 kickoff, so 6:45 p.m. if you're watching in South Africa. Last year was Scotland 30, England 21, and 2023, England 23, Scotland 29. The odds, England 3-1 on favourites, Scotland 16-5, and the draw is 28-1. So wouldn't it be amazing for us neutrals for another 38-all draw like that game a few years ago? That would be absolutely out of this world amazing. Okay, so what we're going to do in this one is, we're going to look through the teams, just go through the teams quickly, then look at what changes have been made to the teams, and then talk about how each of the teams have gone so far as well in the tournament. Okay, so let's pull up the home team first. So let me grab that now. So England team. So starting with the front row, got Ellis Genge, vice captain, with Luke Cowan-Dickie and Will Stewart. Second row, Maro Itoje, captain, and then Ollie Chesham in there in the second row. Back row, Tom Curry, Ben Earl, and Tom Willis. Halfbacks, Alex Mitchell and Finn Smith. The left wing is Ollie Slideholme. Centres, Henry Slade and Ollie Lawrence. And then right wing, Tommy Freeman. And then fullback, Marcus Smith. On the bench then we have Jamie George, Finn Baxter, Joe Hayes, George Martin. Not George Martin anymore. It's Ted Hill because Martin has picked up an injury. Chandler Cunningham South, Ben Curry, Harry Randall and Elliot Daly. Okay, so England going for a 6-2 split there. Then on to the Scotland team. And front row is Pierre Schumann, Dave Cherry, Xander Fagerson. Second row, Johnny Gray and Grant Gilchrist. Back row, Jamie Ritchie, Rory Darge and Jack Dempsey. Rory Darge is one of the co-captains. Halfbacks, Ben White and Finn Russell, the other co-captain. Left wing, Duhan van der Merwe. Centres, Tom Jordan and Hugh Jones. Right wing is Kyle Rowe. And fullback is Blair Kinghorn. On the bench then we have Ewan Ashman, Rory Sutherland, Will Hurd, Sam Skinner, Gregor Brown, Matt Ferguson, Jamie Dobie and Stafford McDowell. So also a 6-2 split for Scotland. Okay, so let's talk about the England team, what changes they made. Not very many, and who can blame them after that fantastic win against France. But just one change for them. Ollie Chesham actually came in to replace George Martin in the second row. Martin was named on the bench, as you can see in the graphic, but he's subsequently injured and he's replaced by Ted Hill. So England keeping faith with the team that did the job against France. And yeah, you don't want to really tinker too much with a winning team, honestly, especially when they've been looking for, combinations, etc., that actually work for them. They don't really, if they lose this one, maybe more tinkering, but at the moment, yeah, don't fix it if it's not broken, as it were. Looking at the team though, you've got Finn Smith there at 10. They absolutely looked a lot better with him at 10 compared to Marcus Smith. Marcus Smith, undoubted talent, but he's more about himself. Finn Smith is about the players around him, and you kind of see that. Like that centre partnership with Henry Slade and Ollie Lawrence made sense with Finn Smith at 10. It doesn't make sense with Marcus Smith at 10 because Marcus Smith, he's the one that's going to make the break, whereas Finn Smith is the one that's going to try and put one of those two through a hole or put them in a position where they can put somebody else through a hole. So very different, players at 10, the two Smiths. And yeah, as I said, that centre partnership looks so much better with Finn Smith at 10. Are they going to be able to do the same in this one? I don't know. It would have been great though to be able to see them up against Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones in that Scotland midfield as well. Unfortunately, no Tuipulotu injured before the tournament started. Then I think bringing Luke Cowan-Dickey into the starting team, I think was a decent shout as well. And having Jamie George off the bench, when he was captain, he was under a lot of pressure for his place. People didn't think he should be captain because he wasn't, the best hooker available, according to most. So having that impact off the bench and feeling like he needs to prove something, I think has really worked out well for England. That back row, Tom Curry, Ben Earl, and Tom Willis, so much better balanced than the back row that they played against Ireland. With the two Currys in there, did well on the poaching side of things, but poaching ball and doing nothing with it doesn't really matter, and they've kind of found it out to their detriment, I think. In the second half, then I think Ollie Slightholme and Tommy Freeman, decent options in the wing. England have so many good wingers, and I think that again the problem with that is if they have a bad game, you've gone from like being number 1 or 2 in the pecking order to number 6, 7, all the way down to 10 maybe in the pecking order, and you mightn't see another cap for another couple of years, if it's a particularly bad performance. But at the moment, I think both of them are doing pretty well. Marcus Smith, had a mixed bag, a fullback against France, I think, but certainly lots of positives there. Running the ball back. Be interesting to see if Scotland actually are going to kick into his area or not, because if you've looked at my stats video, Scotland are kicking nowhere near as much as they were last year and the year before, and England are kicking way more than they used to. And Scotland, not kicking tactically and long the way they used to either. They used to kick for like 900 to like 1,100 meters or so per game. Now, round about half that or even less. So really change their tactics, holding onto the ball a lot more. I wonder if they'll change tack now, though, with Marcus Smith back there. Maybe put up, some testers for him, especially early on, and see if they can get any joy out of that. Or are they going to stick with, the tactics that they've used so far in the first 2 rounds? That's kind of going to be interesting. And then also the fact that you have Marcus Smith there, a fullback, versus Blair Kinghorn on the other side. 2 fantastic counter-attacking fullbacks. I think it's going to be a really exciting game because of that. Then, England have decent impact from the bench there as well. Elliot Daly coming on, scoring the winning try against France. Must have really enjoyed that, given how many critics he's had in recent years as well. Let's have a look then at what Scotland have done with their team. So let me pull up my notes here. So Scotland, first of all, Pierre Schoeman back in at loose head. Rory Sutherland drops down to the bench. For me, I think Schoeman is the better option. He's definitely the better carrying option for them. Jamie Ritchie then back in with Matt Fagerson, dropping down to the bench. I think that change is simply because the Irish back row, for the most part, outplayed them in that game up at Murrayfield. So bringing Ritchie in and hopefully getting extra emphasis there. And they're going to need that as well, because, as I said, that England back row looked good against France. And, I think the Scotland back row, certainly all quality players, but they're going to have to bring their best, I think, to get the best of the English back row. Then Finn Russell pass fit at 10. So important for them, I think. They do have like 3 playmakers in the team. Obviously, you got Finn Russell at 10, Tom Jordan at 12, and Blair Kinghorn at 15. So either Jordan or Kinghorn could have slotted in at 10. But I think, Scotland, they built their style of play and especially their attack around Finn Russell so much that I think having him playing definitely going to be a huge bonus for them. And a guy that there's no other 10 like him in the world. Kyle Rowe then in for the injured Darcy Graham. Very different player to Darcy Graham. Darcy Graham, very elusive runner. Kyle Rowe, more of a direct runner, but a decent finisher as well. And he always, performs well, when he's asked to. Probably not, in terms of just pure try scoring, not as good as Darcy Graham, but he has other strings to his bow as well. So, that means to see how he goes there. Again, we talked about, both teams going for the 6-2 split. For Scotland going for that 6-2 split, despite that, head clash between Graham and Russell against Ireland, that basically deprived them of both of those players and then led to a reshuffle in the back line. But I think the fact that they did have to reshuffle then, and you wouldn't say, obviously losing Finn Russell and Darcy Graham, two really talented players, definitely going to have an effect on you. But in terms of the actual having to reshuffle, it wasn't, I don't think, that bad for them, compared to if you look at other teams where sometimes when they have to reshuffle, like, it's, you got a 9 playing on the wing that doesn't have the pace for it, or can't, can't defend out there, or sometimes they put like a back rower, out on the wing, because the back options they have, maybe not suitable for that, etc. But I think for Scotland, I think they cope with it fairly well. I think the scoreline probably would have been closer. Just the fact that Finn Russell and Darcy Graham are such special players, but I don't think it affected the actual outcome of the game, losing those two. But they seem to be comfortable at least with having just Jamie Dobie and Stafford McDowell, who is a fantastic player and has been playing brilliantly in the URC as well on the bench. So they're decent options to come off the bench anyway, and do provide decent cover, but also in the starting back line you've got players who can switch into 10 or go to full back, drop into the centres, etc. So I think that they have plenty of cover in the starting team anyway. So it's more a case of, not necessarily losing a certain player. It's more losing 3 backs, say, obviously would be a problem for them in terms of trying to get the balance right and moving players around. But Scotland, they've had kind of a mixed Six Nations. Really good start against Italy, then Italy come back at them, and then Scotland are able to go again. Then against Ireland, never really fired a shot, honestly, in that game. Like, Ireland looked comfortable all the way through. But that's happened to Scotland, on so many occasions against Ireland. And the one thing I would say about it is that, in terms of the Six Nations, it never seems to have a knock-on effect on the next game, in terms of, they don't seem to lose confidence playing against England or France or whoever. They seem to still be able to have a go. So I don't think they're going to be less confident coming into this game just because they've lost against Ireland. But the fact that England are kind of have their tails up as well means that they're a very different prospect, I think, to Scotland. Scotland have had the wood over England for 4 years now on the bounce. But England is certainly, feeling like that wind is beginning to change and it's going in their direction instead. And, I talked about it in the preview to the round as well. The fact that, the result of this game, for both of these coaches is going to have a dramatic effect on, the trajectory for them in their positions, and any pressure that's going to come on them as well, or optimism that is born out of a win. Because if England win and, then suddenly they've beaten France, they've beaten Scotland, they came close to Ireland, they're still in a shout for the championship, and Borthwick is looking good, probably, I wouldn't say until the next World Cup, but certainly nobody's going to be calling for his head for the rest of the year, you would imagine, given that, the summer tours are going to be development tours for all of the Six Nations, well, the Lions teams, and etc. And then, autumn internationals, you'll see how they go later in the year anyway. But that would be a big boost for him. Whereas if they lose, then I think a couple of things are going to happen. More pressure on him. Then, three things. More pressure on him. Then probably the debate about 10 is going to come up again. It's going to be, Finn Smith actually couldn't do it. Let's put Marcus Smith back in there, right? And possibly for the next few years, chop and change between those two. And then the third one is, I think there's going to be a lot of talk about how much England kick. Now, England have done well in the first two games by kicking a lot and not actually kicking long. They're kicking from 9. So, Alex Mitchell putting in a lot of, mainly box kicks, but some, chips over the top, grubbers, etc. And playing, like, in terms of the kicking game, 10 meters or so shorter than other teams. So making all of those kicks contestable, and that's actually working out for them, and it's where they're getting a lot of their attacking play from. But if they lose, people are just going to look at the stats and say, wait, why are England kicking so much? Like, England have kicked 68 times in the first 2 rounds, which is an average of 34. And Scotland, have kicked, I don't know, how many is it? Maybe like 40 something times. So big difference between those two teams, in terms of the average as well. And if England are kicking around that kind of level again, probably less because they kicked more against France than they did against Ireland. But even if they're kicking less against Scotland than they did against France, but probably somewhere around 30 kicks, say, if they lose, that's going to be one of the things picked out. It's going to be, why are they kicking so much? They're kicking so much because it was working for them. That's why they're kicking so much. And in this one, something didn't work for them. But it doesn't mean that tactic should be like put in the bin, because they're actually getting success from it. When you see it in the totality of, their attacking positions as well, trying to, as I said, put in those contestable kicks and not necessarily win clean ball either. They're going up. They're kind of disrupt the ball for the opposition, maybe cause knock-ons, or get scrappy ball where they just tap it back on their own side, create a bit of chaos, and then, the likes of Marcus Smith can really kind of shine in that. Or you get it to a Finn Smith who can spot, misaligned defense and put somebody through a hole. That's kind of the tactic that they're using. But again, if they lose, it's going to be criticized. For Scotland then, the loss for them, I think, is going to be more impactful because Gregor Townsend has been in position for a lot longer than Steve Borthwick. And there's always been this kind of love-hate relationship with him, I think, and especially given, those years where he's having spats with Finn Russell, etc., and not quite getting on. Some of that stuff might resurface if they lose this game. And I think the added pressure on top of that is the fact that Franco Smith, who's the current coach of Glasgow, he's getting linked with the Wales job. And he's saying, as you would expect your head coach to say, listen, I'm happy in my job. I'm in the future, maybe I'd like to do an international role, but not right now. I'm focused on Glasgow, etc., saying all the right things. But it will kind of, set off a few alarm bells, I think, in Scottish rugby, thinking, well, we were probably thinking that, like, when Gregor steps aside, that maybe Franco would be the next in line, or at least one of the options to take over. So losing him to Wales, we don't really want that to happen. And then if you have a case of, Townsend's under pressure and Franco Smith, might be then in a better negotiation position of kind of, not necessarily saying, give me his job. I don't think he's that kind of, coach. There are other coaches who we've seen do that, recently, unfortunately. But I don't think he'd be doing that. But at the same time, he doesn't really have to say anything, I don't think. I think they would come to him in that scenario of, send him out and say, listen, we're not sure, but would you be interested? Maybe, you know, those kind of conversations I'm sure happen all the time. And then you could get Franco Smith, you know, coming back into the test arena. You know, he was previously, you know, coach with Italy and taking Scotland on, you know, and maybe bringing some of that mental toughness that he brought to the, Glasgow squad into Scotland. So I think that's the kind of jeopardy that's there for Gregor Townsend and Scotland, with a loss from this. If Scotland win, they're kind of almost in this one, they're kind of on a hiding to nothing, honestly, because they win, then people say, well, it's kind of just normal, right? They've won the last 4 and they've won 5 in a row, which will be kind of unprecedented, for them, but it would still be, you know, it wouldn't be seen as an amazing step forward or anything for the Scotland team. And, you know, a step forward for the Scotland team at this stage is finishing those top 2s and hopefully getting their hands on the tournament trophy. You know, that's, I think, where their goal has to be. Finishing 3rd or 4th, is nice. You know, you obviously don't want, you know, again, as an Ireland fan, the bad old years, finishing up with wooden spoons and whatever, or 5th in the tournament is not good. And, you know, if you have that mid-table kind of comfort of you got a couple of wins, you know, and maybe like 2 or 3 losses, in the tournament, but at least you had something to cheer, right? I remember those days, very, very well, with Ireland. But I think if you're a team with ambition, and I think Scotland, looking at the talent that they have there, they should be a team with ambition. And the fact that Glasgow have now got their hands, you know, on the URC trophy last year as well, there's probably more ambition in there for more success as well. And I think that's going to feed into it too, you know, that maybe even beating England and finishing 3rd in the tournament this year, you know, may not be good enough, depending on that whole Franco Smith thing, like where that kind of ends up at the end of the season. But yeah, interesting kind of dynamic to the game there. I think in terms of how I think the game is going to go, as I said, I think England doing much better than they have been, you know, in recent Six Nations. There's always been kind of the one-off display, right? They beat Ireland last year, but that felt like kind of flash in the pan. Whereas this year, they do honestly feel consistently better, but you have to also temper that with the fact that, you know, France left a lot of points out there against them, in that first half as well in the last round. So you got to kind of take that into consideration. And then Scotland, you know, not that convincing against Italy. Seemed completely out of it against Ireland as well. So for me, they haven't produced a really good performance yet. Normally they save it for this game, and I think they're going to have to do that to win. My head is saying England are going to win the game. Heart is saying Scotland, as, you know, fellow URC, you know, country, and I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to go for a Scotland win, but it's going to be very tight. I think it's going to be like a 1-score game. Yeah, and maybe Scotland are going to have to produce something, you know, magical at the end. Finn Russell maybe conjuring up, you know, one of his crazy passes to put someone over for the winning try. But it's definitely, for me, the pick of the weekend in terms of games. It's the one, even though I'm an Ireland fan, this is the one I'm looking forward to most. And I'm glad I'm off this weekend, that I'm going to be able to see all of the games live. But that's the end of this one. So let me know what you think down in the comments.